Welcome to Feelin Seen with Dean, hosted by Dean Michael. Let's get into it.
Some of you have probably noticed the dolls behind me. Most people assume I collect them because I like dolls. That's true, but that's not why they are really there. They are there to remind me of a little boy who thought he had to leave parts of himself behind just to belong. When I was 5 years old, I had a best friend. Her name was Sarah. She was not a person, she was a doll. I love everything about her, the fashion, her beauty. I did not know it then. I was simply loving something that made me feel alive. But as I got older, I started realizing that not everyone smiled when they saw me holding Sarah. Little by little, I began hearing the message: boys do not do that. You'll grow out of it. Nobody ever sat me down and said, Dean, do not be yourself. It was quieter than that. The things that brought me the most joy slowly became the things I learned to hide. And looking back, I do not think I buried Sarah. I think I buried the boy who loved her. And I have a feeling I am not the only one. For a long time, I thought this was a story about accepting myself. I don't think it is. I think it's a story about remembering myself. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped asking, who am I? And I started asking, what do I need to become so people can accept me? And without realizing it, I began editing myself. Not just what I said, but what I loved, how I spoke, the parts of my personality that felt different. The more I tried to fit in, the further I drifted away from myself. What's interesting is I thought I was protecting myself. But now when I think back, I was protecting everyone else from meeting the real version of me. And here's what I discovered: healing is not becoming someone new, it's remembering the person you were before you believed you had to become someone else. That's the conversation I want to have with you today, because I do not think we outgrow the truest part of ourselves. I think we quietly leave them behind, hoping we will finally belong. But if that's true, maybe healing is not about finding yourself. Maybe it's about living with the courage to finally come back home. You know, it's funny what we remember. Out of everything that happened throughout my childhood, the memory that stayed with me was not a fight, neither was it one big moment that changed everything. It was something else. Something that at the time did not even seem important. Thinking back, I think that's how most of our deepest wounds begin. Not through one life changing event, but through the hundreds of tiny moments that slowly teach us it is safe to be. When I was about 6 to 7 years old, I did not know I was beginning to edit myself. I just knew there was a doll named Sarah that made me feel completely like myself. And without realizing, she became the first part of me that I quietly left behind. Sarah was not just a doll, she was my best friend. I remember sitting with my god sister and looking through her doll collection. There was something about those dolls that fascinated me. The fashion, the tiny details. I could have spent hours just looking at them. One of them became my favorite. Her name was Sarah. When I was around 6 to 7 years old, I was not thinking about what boys were supposed to like. Neither was I questioning who I was. I was just a little boy loving something that brought him joy. Thinking back, I think that's one of the purest versions of ourselves that we will ever meet. The version of us before the world starts telling us who we're supposed to become. As I got older, something started changing, not inside of me, but around me. People stopped thinking it was cute. The older I became, the more I noticed the looks of discomfort. Nobody ever sat me down and said, Dean, stop loving dolls. It was much quieter than that. I simply started learning that certain parts of me made other people uncomfortable. And what's heartbreaking is I never grew out of loving dolls. I grew into hiding it. There's a difference because it was never a phase, it was a part of my nature. Little by little, I started believing something that so many of us believe without ever realizing it. If something I naturally love makes other people uncomfortable, then maybe the problem is me. Looking back, I don't think Sarah was the first thing that I lost. I think she was the first reminder of the version of myself I believed I had to leave behind. For years, I thought accepting myself meant becoming someone different. Now, I think it meant giving myself permission to stop abandoning myself. And as an adult, those dolls found their way back into my life. Not because I was trying to recreate my childhood, but because I was finally reconnecting with it. Sometimes people ask why they are still sitting behind me, and the answer is simple. They remind me that the parts of ourselves that we bury rarely disappear. They wait patiently for the day we finally feel safe enough to come back for them. And thinking back, I don't think Sarah was the only thing I carried with me from childhood. She was the first part of myself I believed I had to leave behind. And without realizing it, that one decision quietly changed the way I experienced the world. Because every time we abandon a piece of who we are, we don't just hide that part of ourselves, we start watching every other part of ourselves too. Without realizing it, hiding one part of myself taught me something that I never expected. I became incredibly aware of people around me, their body language, the tone in their voice, the conversations they had when they thought nobody was paying attention. At the time, I thought I was protecting myself. But after reflecting, I think I was learning to read people. And that completely changed the way I saw people. I do not think I became good at reading people because I was naturally observant. I think I became observant because I was always asking the same question. Is it safe to be me here? At the time, I never realized that's what I was searching for. Every room I walked into, my mind quietly looked for the answer. Whether it was middle school, high school, or family gathering, my attention always went to the same place, the people in the room. Would the way I talked stand out? Did what I was wearing make me look gay? Was someone going to ask me a question that I was not ready to answer? And during that time period, I was always guarded. Not because I wanted to be, but because I never knew when I would feel like I would have to edit myself. Then there were the places that felt completely different. My god sister's house, my cousin's house, my best friend's house. The dolls were a part of it, but the memories we made matter too. But neither of those things were what made those places feel different. It was how I felt when I was there. For a little while, I could finally exhale. The way I spoke stopped feeling like something that needed to be monitored. And for once, I was not worried about how people were seeing me. I could just be Dean. The hardest part was not leaving those houses. What hurt the most was realizing that every time I went home, it felt like I had to leave that version of myself behind too. And now when I look back, I don't think those places became special because they were different. They became special because I never had to pretend there. That's when I finally understood something. Home is not always a place. Sometimes home is the first person who lets you stop pretending. And my best friend's mom gave me that feeling. She never made me earn permission to be myself. And to be honest, I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can ever give to another person. Without realizing it, those years changed me. When you spent enough time wondering whether it's safe to be yourself, you naturally begin paying attention. Not because you're trying to judge people, but because you're trying to understand them. I think that is where I first started learning to read people. As I got older, something unexpected started happening. The more I understood people, the more I started noticing about myself. I was not just exhausted from watching everyone else, I was exhausted from constantly watching myself. And I never realized how much energy that was stealing until I finally stopped surviving long enough to experience something I had been missing my entire life. For a long time, I thought acceptance would change how I felt about myself. But after learning, I think it changed something much bigger. It changed how much of myself I had left to give. I never realized how exhausting it was to constantly monitor who I was, to think before I spoke, to wonder how I was going to be perceived. And question, was I too much or was I even enough? Survival is expensive. You don't realize how much it's costing you until one day you do not have to pay that price anymore. As I slowly started reconnecting with myself, again, something unexpected happened, but not all at once. This time it was little by little. I found myself returning to the things I hadn't enjoyed in years. My love for dolls, playing soccer, beach volleyball, listening to music that I grew up with. At first, they felt like old hobbies, but today I see them differently. They were breadcrumbs, each one quietly leading me back to the version of myself I had left behind years ago. Then something happened that I will never forget. There was a situation where something I'd been looking forward to was delayed. Years earlier, that would have frustrated me. It probably would have stayed on my mind for far longer than it needed to be. This time, I simply accepted it. My husband looked at me and said, I didn't expect you to react that way. That simple sentence stopped me because for the first time, someone else noticed my healing before I even said anything or before I even noticed it myself. That moment changed everything for me because I realized I was not just thinking differently, I was becoming available in a way I had never been before. Acceptance did not make me a better person, it made me a more complete person. All the energy I used to spend surviving was finally available for living. My husband started experiencing a calmer version of me. Patience began replacing frustration. Life slowly became something I could enjoy again instead of constantly manage. Healing did not give me a new life, it gave me energy back. And the biggest surprise was not how differently I saw myself, it was realizing how many forgotten pieces of me had quietly been waiting all along. Peace was one of them, joy was another. One of them is on a shelf behind me. As I became more comfortable being myself, something else started changing. The people around me started responding differently. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, because there was finally someone to respond to. That's when I discovered something I had misunderstood for years. Honesty does not push the right people away. It reveals who was only comfortable with the version of you that was pretending. One of the biggest surprises after accepting myself was not how I changed, it was how some of my relationships changed. For years, I thought authenticity would bring me closer to everybody. But when I now think back, it simply revealed who had actually known me all along. There was one friendship I will never forget. This person worked in social media. Whenever we talked, our conversations almost always found their way back to YouTube. I genuinely appreciated it. They always had ideas, suggestions, ways I could create better content. And for a while, I thought they were simply trying to help me. Then one day, I noticed something. Every conversation seemed to end the same way. Instead of feeling like I just caught up with a friend, it would feel like I would have just finished another coaching session. So I said something that to myself felt completely reasonable. I told them, I would love if sometimes we could just talk as friends. I really value your advice, but sometimes I don't need a mentor. I just miss my friend. And that conversation changed everything. We have never been the same since that. And for a long time, I wondered if I did something wrong. But today, I see it differently. I was not rejecting their advice. I was protecting the friendship. Looking back, I don't think my honesty ended the relationship. I think my boundary revealed what the relationship had quietly become. That realization set me free because healthy boundaries do not destroy healthy relationships. They reveal where the relationship was even healthy to begin with. Acceptance has a way of changing every relationship in your life. Not because you become harder to love, but because people finally meet the real you. Some relationships grow deeper, others quietly fall away. Neither outcome means failure, but sometimes the outcome can mean clarity. The more honest I became with other people, the more one question kept coming back to me. If accepting myself could change my friendships, what else could it change? That's when I realized the greatest relationship acceptance was transforming was the one I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. The relationship that I had with myself. There was a time in my life where I honestly believed that I was a failure. Not because somebody else told me that I was, but because I started believing it myself. After one of my biggest setbacks in life, I remember thinking something has to change. I was exhausted, not from failing, but from feeling like I could not count on myself anymore. And that is a very lonely place to be because when you stop trusting your own word, it's hard to trust anything else. And when I look back, I was not lacking motivation. I was lacking integrity with myself. I would tell myself, I'll start tomorrow, but then tomorrow would come. And of course, I would find another excuse. I'm tired. I don't feel like it. I'll do it later. And for years, I kept making promises to myself and quietly breaking them. The hardest part was not disappointing other people, it was disappointing myself. Eventually, I got tired of hearing my own excuses. Not because I wanted a different life, but because I wanted to become someone who can believe their own words again. That is when everything started changing. I stopped asking myself, do I feel like doing this today? And a different question replaced it. I said I was going to do it, so am I going to believe in myself or not? Every promise I kept became another reason to trust myself. Every small commitment I honored became evidence that I was becoming someone I could depend on. That is when I realized something. Confidence is not something you find. Confidence is something you build. One kept promise at a time. For years, I thought I needed motivation. And now, when I look back, motivation was never the actual problem. The real breakthrough happened the day my word started meaning something to me. Because the greatest relationship I rebuilt was not with another person, it was with myself. Once I trusted myself again, something unexpected happened. I stopped wishing I was someone else. And for the first time, the life I spent years chasing no longer looked better than the life that I was living. And that is when I realized acceptance had quietly become peace. For years, I thought healing meant becoming something different. Maybe if I became more successful, more confident, more accomplished, then I would finally feel like enough. But looking back, I don't think I was chasing success. I was chasing permission to finally be myself. There was a moment that changed everything for me. After one of my biggest setbacks in life, I realized something I had never considered before. The outside world does not get to decide whether I am enough. An exam does not decide that. A title cannot decide that. And no achievement has that power. Neither does anyone else's opinion. And for the first time in my life, I decided I was enough before anything outside of me could confirm it. Something unexpected happened after that. When the external world finally caught up, nothing inside of me changed. I'd already decided I was worthy and that I was enough. Then something beautiful started happening. I found myself returning to the things I once believed I had left behind. I started collecting dolls again, not because I'm trying to relieve my childhood, because I'm finally giving a forgotten part of myself permission to breathe again. Every doll I brought home felt like another reminder that I did not have to keep apologizing for who I was. Embracing that part of myself unlocked something unexpected. Other forgotten pieces slowly started finding their way home too. Soccer, music, beach volleyball, joy, expression, and peace. And now when I think back, I do not think I was collecting dolls. I was truly collecting pieces of myself. And something else surprised me. The people I loved did not pull away, they leaned in. For the first time in my life, they weren't meeting a new version of Dean. They were finally getting to know the one version of me who has been there all along the entire time. Maybe that's what acceptance really is. It is not about becoming someone you've never been. Healing was never about fixing yourself. Instead, healing is finally giving yourself permission to stop leaving pieces of yourself behind because the parts of you that have been waiting all of these years never stopped hoping you would come back. Looking back, I believed this journey was about self acceptance. The deeper truth was that I'd finally come home to myself. And once I finally came home, everything else in my life finally knew where to find me. You know, when I first sat down to have this conversation, I thought I was going to tell you a story about accepting myself. But now, I think this story became something much bigger. It became a story about remembering myself. And for years, I believed the goal was becoming someone I could finally be proud of. But today, I see things completely differently. The real journey was not becoming someone new. The real journey was finally giving myself permission to stop abandoning the person that I had been all along. It's funny, the dolls behind me have not changed. They have been there this entire time. The only thing that changed was me. For years, I looked at them and saw something I thought I had to leave behind. Now, I look at them and see a little boy who never stopped hoping I would come back. Maybe that's what healing really is. Not becoming a different person. It is not something that you earn. And it certainly is not something the world gets to approve. Healing is quietly returning to the parts of yourself that never stopped waiting for you. If you have spent years trying to fit in, trying to become who everyone else expected, or believing you had to earn the right to be yourself, I hope this conversation leaves you with one truth. You do not have to wait for anyone's permission anymore. The world does not get to decide when you are enough. The world never got that power. One day, people might finally recognize your worth. You might achieve the goal, get the promotion, build the business, find the relationship, reach the dream you have worked so hard for. And I genuinely want that for you. But when those moments arrive, don't let them be the reason you finally believe in yourself. Let them become confirmation of what you've already chosen to believe about yourself. Because the greatest discovery I made was not that I finally accepted myself. It was realizing I never needed to become someone else. I just needed to come home. And maybe there's a part of you that has been patiently waiting for you to come home too. If this conversation resonated with you, I want you to watch my last podcast about being the black sheep of the family. Before I could finally accept myself, I had to understand why I spent so many years believing I was the problem. That conversation became an important part of this journey, and I think it'll connect even more dots for you. I'm going to go ahead and link that podcast right here. I highly recommend you watch that podcast next, and I will see you there.